is the best way to put it. So think about like easing back on the intensity, at least for week one. Like you don't want to move intensity and volume up at the same time, right? Like those two. So intensity meaning like the weights that you're using or the speed with which you're completing the workouts, and also the total amount of work. Like you only really want to modulate like one variable at a time. And also we're talking about that extra training session to be frequency. So now we have all three variables that are involved in program design, like in flux. So you really want to be like, okay, so we up the volume and the frequency. Maybe we'll scale back the intensity a little bit just as you get used to, you know, like said week of training kind of thing like that. But yeah, I wanted to like bring you back more into your wheelhouse now that we built up a general fitness level. So like the weights are back.
Yes, no, felt good. My chest was really sore yesterday from day one. So I was like, oh, this is, I wasn't sore those 3 weeks where it was all banned, maybe, you know, for better or for worse. And so I was like, oh, my chest is sore this morning.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that, yeah. The nice thing is with switching the program up too, you're going to get that variability. So there's going to be like, one, psychologically, it's going to be interesting. And then two, your body's not going to over adapt and just kind of stagnate, especially since we're trying to encourage that continued progress and prevent any kind of plateaus or anything like that.
Yes, yeah, the shorter intervals are definitely good. Keeps focused. And then there's something I really don't like. It's like, well, hey, I only need to do it 1 or 2 more weeks. Like you know what I mean? Like I get myself psyched up to be like, you know, I'm not gonna be doing this for the next 3 months. So push. And even then, it's not like I don't like it. It's just, you know, yeah, my lunges are still working on it. At least I know what they're supposed to look like now, but their depth is not there. It's strange. I don't know what happened. We'll get there.
Well, I think what happened is like one, lack of practice, and then two, also like being sedentary over the past like year plus now, especially because of work, like not moving around as much. Like your body's going to solidify into that position where your hip is used to being at or below 90 degrees. So the hip flexor, which is that psoas, which is a primary contributor to the ability to open up space in the lunge, is going to be restricted in its range of motion. So that would be one of the main points that I would say. But again, it's everything. It's practice, right? It's just diligent practice, working on it over and over like that. Well, cool, man. You want to talk about habits?
Habits. Good theme, good topic.
They will set you free. Well, I'm going to let you open. Well, like what to you, like what do habits mean in your fitness career and your fitness life?
If anything, I think I'm approaching it from like a prophylactic sense. Like one thing we've talked about with me, like, is not checking work email. So I know a healthy habit that will keep me focused in that moment and then that time is just not to check the email. Not 100%, sure, but I know I've gotten a lot better, and it's a habit I had to build over time. Like I kind of just wanted to do it and did it. I started check less. Okay, I'm only gonna check twice. Now I can make it through a whole session without checking at all. So it's like one micro example.
Good. And are you talking more in the sense of like bad habits that you're trying to fix?
Yes. One thing I like about the book is about building good habits. But yeah, I guess I approached it from the negative. You know, avoiding bad food habits, avoiding bad gym habits, avoiding bad sleep habits. But I mean, it's intertwined, because if you're building a good habit, you're probably eroding a bad habit at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And let's talk about that. So like, how would you define a habit? Just like if someone was like, you know, what is a habit? Not an example, but an actual like definition.
Human behavior performed in a pattern, so there has to be some degree of repetition, consciously or unconsciously. I think a lot of our small day-to-day habits are informed by past behavior and are not performed consciously. It's just how we do it. Right?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's a huge point to make, that some of it is unconscious. And I would argue that majority of the behaviors are unconscious.
Yes, not examined. Like, And I think it's good to put that microscope on almost everything. Like, I was talking to someone and they were like, I was like, I can never figure out which pocket my keys are in. And they were like, oh, you don't put them in the same pocket every time? And I'm like, oh, like that would be a way to develop a habit that would add some chaos to me just throwing keys in whichever pocket I come to first.
Where's the fun in that though?
I know, right?
Then you would
Right.
know,
I mean,
right?
you could like overdo it and give yourself OCD if you had micro habits for every single thing. Or
Yes, yeah, true. There's definitely like moderation is usually a good policy in most things. But I think you bring up a good point. So like two books, one I know that you're reading, and then another book. So there's The Power of Habit is a great book, and then also Atomic Habits, which I know you've been diving into. And I think they both talk about this idea as the habitual behaviors as basically following a sequence of events. So there's some type of trigger, there's a behavior, response behavior, and then some type of reward system that internalizes that behavior and creates intrinsic motivation to repeat it, right? So Pavlov has the dogs, the classic example, right? Bring them food, ring the bell, they start salivating when they hear the bell, right? So those are like classical or operant conditioning. So our brains, unfortunately, as much as advanced we like to think we are not that much better. So most of what we do habitually and unconsciously in a lot of cases is trigger, response, reward, right? So I get home, I'm tired, I eat, I feel good. Boom. That's the pattern for a lot of people that gets repeated over and over. And sometimes we're not even conscious of these patterns existing. We don't acknowledge the triggers and things like that, which is why people are like, oh, I just can't seem to get it together. It's just kind of happening, right? Have you ever experienced that or know anybody that's kind of like, why is this happening?
oh, sure. I think a lot of people like are maybe not aware of loops they're in and want a different result, but they haven't done anything to change the sequence of events or get a different stimulus.
Do you feel like more people know and don't do it, or they don't even acknowledge the pattern?
Right. I think it's better to like be blissfully unaware and not even acknowledge the pattern. I think with a lot of people, myself included, that you work with, we acknowledge the pattern, and which is worse arguably, and then see ourselves for whatever reason making those same mistakes over and over
Sure.
again. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I always say like the gap between knowing and doing is very wide. Like, in the sense that I think the first step is like you have to acknowledge what the pattern is, right? Because of the limits of mental processing power, we can't consciously move through our day, right? There are things that we just have to do unconsciously. Like I'm sure you've had the experience of just showing up at your house, having driven home and being like, whoa, did I time travel? Like what just happened? Right.
that
And
was the
what were you gonna say? Sorry.
no. Driving was the one of the exact things I was thinking of. So much of driving is automatic, subconscious, and habitual. Like you don't think consciously as you move through each step of the driving process, like ever.
Yeah, and that's actually why road rage happens, because our senses are heightened and aware because of the implicit danger in the activity, and also the fact that we're operating at such a high level of intensity with all these automatic processes. So our frontal cortex isn't able to intervene and be like, don't be a rage monster when somebody cuts you off. We're just like in that fight or flight sympathetic state when we're driving, ready for it, which is kind of interesting. So if you know anyone that has road rage, forgive them. It's not their fault. It's biology. But yeah, when it comes to habits, like as you've been diving into the book, like what have you encountered as a strategy to sort of alter or identify first and then alter an afferent pattern of behavior that exists?
I mean, I think I am changing I'm trying to fit it into the formula, but I feel like I'm changing my food habits for the better by logging and tracking my calories. So trying to, put that into like the formula, but I think a lot of my food habits were backed with like the knowledge and the data were like out of sync with one another. So the habit of putting in my calories and tracking my macros is giving me a better result with my food and knowing what I'm eating.
Okay. And let's identify and break it down into our trigger response reward system here. So I guess like what triggers you to record your food? What is the precursor to you exercising that habit?
Like wanting a meal or knowing that it's time to eat. And now I have the habit in place where, as I'm assembling a meal or even before it's assembled, I'm putting in the calories and I'm tracking it. And once that step is done, then I can actually eat it. And then like the result is a healthy meal that is on track for my macros for the day.
Okay. I think in that, so eating itself becomes the trigger. The behavior or response becomes logging the food. And why do you keep doing it? What is the reward to you for doing it?
Like physical and mental health. So like I think it's sanity producing, and I know in the long run it is physically. It promotes my physical well-being.
Okay, and that's the larger context of the habit. What about immediately? Like upon doing it, do you feel good about doing it?
Yes, I feel good about doing it because I feel I am fully informed on the meal I'm eating. I know where it fits into the day and I can enjoy it without like a good example of like me eating healthy before would have been, I'm going to have some chicken. It's a half chicken with the skin on and a bunch of barbecue sauce. But, like the delusion there, unguided, was like, no, it's fine. I'm eating chicken. And now
Yes.
with the app and with that knowledge and with logging, it's like, that was probably like 1,000 calories of, as like a light chicken.
Healthy food. Well, I think too, like to think about there, the reward system is control. Like you're controlling the outcome much more. So you're gaining a sense of control, which is part of what we want, control over the process. And I think it's important too to differentiate between the immediacy of reward and it's the reward in the larger context of your goals, right? So it's like the immediate reward is like, I feel good about what I'm doing right now because I'm tracking, I feel like I'm on track. But that's within the larger narrative of I'm making healthy decisions. I feel good about taking care of myself, right? That like larger narrative. And I think those things go together.
Yes. And that's what we build towards, like that's what that guy was saying in the beginning of the book about, this is the British cycling team that maybe wasn't great, but they were making a lot of little changes, and added up to something big, but they weren't necessarily focused on the big picture, the whole time from the beginning. It was a lot of micro adjustments and building better habits, piece by piece, little pieces.
Yeah, that's why we talk about always like habit or behavioral goals versus outcome goals. Like I want to lose 50 pounds is great, but it's hard to attach to on a day-to-day basis. That's like the larger direction of the journey versus, okay, today I'm going to log my food, right? That's much more manageable and within our wheelhouse. So let's dive into, I think it's really interesting since you're reading the book, we can have a great conversation about it. Some of the strategies that are employed in Atomic Habits to implement a new habit or to replace a bad habit, right? So we have our pattern, which is trigger, response, reward, right? So we have an afferent pattern that's like get home, eat food, feel good, right? So if you're trying to lose weight and you're binging on food as soon as you get home, it's not a good strategy. So the trigger is the same. You eventually have to go home at some point. So that's not going to be removed. We have to remove the middle portion, which is the response, and then replace it with something that's going to provide an equivalent reward. So in this example, we could do go home, trigger could be get home, inclinations to eat food. We're going to replace it with something in the opposite direction, exercise. So get home, exercise, reward is endorphins from exercise, feel good, fits in the larger context of I'm trying to be healthy, right? So it's identify the trigger, which we can't usually eliminate, right? Find the replacement for the response, and then also attach the reward to the larger context of current goals. If your goal is to gain 500 pounds, then by all means, come home, eat as much food as you want. But if our goal is generally to be healthy, which I feel like most people at least, express interest in, then we want to make sure that that's a good response in there like that. So what's a habit that you've been working on that has a trigger and you've replaced the response to it?
So before COVID, like I wasn't in the best place mentally anyways. And looking back, a lot of it, I think had to do with like sleep deprivation and playing too many video games. Okay, so the setup would be, I'm at the end of my day. Maybe I went to the gym, maybe I didn't. I've had a full work day. It's like 10 or 11 p.m. I'm gonna reward myself with video games. Problem with that is staying up too late, being overstimulated right before bed. So, you know, a lot of stuff going on, beepity boopity. Like, I know what good sleep hygiene is. Playing video games with 2 hours before bed is not good sleep hygiene.
Sure.
And that put me in just a bad loop. Like, sleep deprivation affected me mentally. I was going to the gym at most like 3 times a week with no like focus, wasn't eating great. So, so as boring as it sounds, I knew going into this plan, I had to remove that. Like, whether there's any time in my week to play video game, it can't be that, because the result was bad. So I replaced it with going to sleep early. So now I just use that time, but I'm getting a much better result out of it. I'm like happier, healthier, more focused, have gym energy. And really, I was in that state for maybe like a year before COVID, and like not good. So as boring as it sounds, now it's like the end of my day, and I'm gonna reward myself with going to bed early. First of all, because I love sleep. I could do 9 hours a night if like left my own devices. So like it is a reward to me. Like, it's not punishing. It feels great to get into bed early and give yourself enough time to have like a good session. So.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, we're only going to do things that benefit us long term. Like, you can only do something that's not beneficial to you for so long. Like, you have to connect it to something, like whether it's some people have like extreme faith and they'll sacrifice themselves for something they believe in or for their family or something like that. But at the same time, they're seeing some benefit from their sacrifice. So it's like, if you going to bed early didn't ultimately positively impact your life, you would probably stop doing it. So you have to pick something that's going to have a positive impact on your life, and then identify the positive impact to reinforce the behavior. To be like, okay, me sleeping more means I feel better. I go to the gym. It's this virtuous cycle that I'm in, and all connected. If it wasn't making you feel better, you'd be like, I'm going back to playing video games because that's fun. So I think that also hits on habits help us fight our opposition to delayed gratification, right? Like, we're built as survival animals for immediate gratification, just like all other animals. Like, our lower mammalian brain always wants to take over that amygdala and like be like, ooh, I want sugar. Ooh, I want to play video games. I want, I want these base needs first. But it's our more developed brain that has to be like, ho. If you don't have the sugar now, you can live longer. What do you think? Right. And so it's this idea of delayed gratification, but we can't always consciously have that. It's the argument with ourselves. We have to kind of implement these habits that are going to do that for us. So I think that's a good point with the sleeping. Have you used now? So one of the big strategies that they talk about in the book is the 2-minute habit. Have you used that at all?
No, haven't got there yet. Haven't used it.
Okay. Do you mind if I give you a preview?
No, let's do it. Like,
okay, awesome. So one of the things people deal with a lot, and I'm sure you do since you work so hard, is procrastination, right? Or like being like, well, I would work out today, but an hour of workout seems like a lot. I'm going to put it off till tomorrow. So the strategy from the book is to be like, look, you don't have to worry about an hour. You don't have to worry about a half hour or even 10 minutes. Whatever you're going to do it for 2 minutes, right? So it's not as much about how long you're doing something. It's the fact that you made the conscious effort and followed through to do something at all. And that starts to build a pattern in your brain. And that idea that if you start with 2 minutes, it'll eventually cascade into a larger amount will inevitably happen every time. Like, who starts doing a workout for 2 minutes and then stops? You're like, wow, I mean, shit, I already got sweaty. I might as well see this through, right? And it's the same thing. Like, I used it personally for implementing a journaling practice at the beginning of quarantine that I've maintained still, like, consistently on a daily basis, no matter what. And the way it started was set the timer for 2 minutes and just write or type. Doesn't matter. Just like, could be stream of consciousness. Doesn't matter. Just like let it go, let it flow. And over time, like, I was doing like a half hour, like 45 minutes sometimes. It was just like word vomit on the page. And I was like, whoa, like, where did this come from? It was the beginning of quarantine. There was a lot of free time. So, but now I've kind of whittled it down to like a 5 or 10 minute daily practice. But at the same time, it was just, at first, it was like 10 minutes seemed impossible. I'm like, what am I going to talk about for 10 minutes and just go like that? So that's the 2 minute habit. Now, do you have anything that you're trying to implement that you think that could help with?
I used it today because I was like, okay, I made it to the gym. Oh, I'm really not feeling it. I'm gonna do cardio. And it's like, but I'm here, I'm gonna do my lunch stuff, work on my lunch. Okay, I've done my lunch stuff. Then I looked at like the optional workout. I was like, why don't I just start it? I'll just do the warm up and then I was in. Like, well, wait,
Beautiful.
I've already worked through the warm ups. It's tricep, bicep. It's fine. Like, just do it. Like, yeah. Okay, so none workout stuff. I probably need to start applying like 2-minute habits to work. Trying to, like, what will help me professionally? Like, how could I expand on my knowledge for 2 minutes? I need to think about it though.
Yeah, I mean, I think reading is a good example. Some people, if they're like trying to build a habit with reading, it's like, okay, read 2 pages.
Right.
Like it's that it doesn't, I think we always underestimate the power of compounding efforts, right? We always assume that things are always going to be as hard as they are to start. And we already know that momentum makes everything easier. So it's like that 2 minutes is the hardest minutes of the entire activity it'll ever be. The rest of it's going to be infinitely easier. So, I think we just underappreciate that. We're like, oh, I don't even want to start. 2 minutes seems so daunting, but swear, timer on the phone, game changer. Another one too, that has been really helpful for me is making things unavoidable. So what that means is essentially whatever the habit is you want to implement, you have to make the conduct of it unavoidable physically, right? So for this journaling habit, the way that I also implement it first thing is I do it first thing in the morning. It's the first thing I do after I drink water and like open my eyes and get in front of the computer. And what I do is the night before, when I finish my work on my computer, I leave the notes app as the open window on my computer. So when I open my computer the next day, I cannot do any work, which I want to do. I want to get to work and do my stuff until I've completed my journaling activity, right? So I've made it literally unavoidable. Like I can't access, like it's staring me in the face and I'm not going to like close that window. I'm like, all right, I'll type for like 5 minutes and just knock this out so that I then can get what I really want is to get to work. So reward system in place and also making it unavoidable like that. So for you with going to the gym or something like that, something that I'm thinking of is like, say like you were tired, you didn't want to necessarily go to the gym, like putting your gym bag or your gym stuff in the way of something else that you want to do that day and just holding yourself to it.
I mean, this is like not a good example. It's not the healthiest thing in the world, but there's a brand new Starbucks right next to the gym. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put in a Starbucks order. Well, it's right there. Like I have to go, like accountability. And of course I'm going to use the caffeine jolt to like, motivate me into the gym.
Yeah.
But yeah, like linking things. So it's like, and so it's also easy to feel, that also like saves a step. You're right there.
Yeah. And that's actually another strategy in and of itself. That's called habit stacking. So that's taking something that you already do or want to do and attaching a new habit to it. So the classic one I always tell clients is like that need to do their mobility first thing in the morning. I'm like, what's something you do every morning, no matter what? You brush your teeth, hopefully, right? So I'm like, before you brush your teeth, you must get on the foam roller for 5 minutes. Otherwise, you're going to have bad breath all day and it's your fault. Like that's the deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell them, right? So that's habit stacking or attaching a new habit to an existing one. So that's another great strategy that you're already implementing, which is awesome.
Right. Like, no, setting yourself up. Like, yes, like the back of my SUV. It's not a big SUV, but like fully stocked gym bag, gym towels, and a big crate with like Costco water bottles, and then obviously like the bands are in there. Well, I even got a couple sets. So I have stuff at home and stuff in my car. So it's like, let's go.
Oh, you're operating at a high level.
Got to be prepared, got to be ready because that's an excuse we'll make. Like, oh, I would have done this, but like I didn't have it nearby. So like have the equipment nearby. Like got a yoga mat, foam roller, foot of my bed, resistance bands. What are the other bands called? Anyways, long bands, short bands.
Oh, I call them like pull-up bands and mini bands. Those are the two names. Yeah. No, I think that's important too, is like the little voice of excuses is limitless. Like the excuses are crazy that can come up, but the more you make it basically unavoidable to do the thing you need to do, the more mental processing power you're going to save yourself, especially because like, I think we have to acknowledge that willpower is finite, unfortunately, right? Like I think it's analogous to like the power meter, your life bar in a video game. And like each time you have to exercise your willpower throughout the day, like, no, I won't eat that donut. No, I didn't get enough sleep last night. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then like finally at night you get home and like there's bad leftovers available and you're like, oh, I'm in. And that's when you break because you've used all your willpower. But if you didn't have to make a conscious effort to go to the gym, if you didn't have to make a conscious effort to find healthy food, like that willpower bar is maintained throughout the day. And you can make a better decision when you're tested or however you want to look at it like that. So habits are really good for that purpose as well, in terms of maintaining sort of your willpower meter or life bar for those moments when you do have to make a conscious decision and work hard at it like that.
Yes, that's true.
How much do you have left in the book?
Oh, I'm not even here. Here's the downside. So professionally, I'm reading and writing all day. Like I read a lot of medical reports in what I do, like, which are actually kind of interesting. Like it's less dry than just legal pleadings. So by the time I get to bed, it's like, that sucks. That's the only thing that sucks about my job. Because like as a child through high school, college, voracious reader, a lot of fiction, granted, but doing what I do where it's words all day, like it can be hard to like also be like, okay, start reading again at night. But it's a really easy read. Like,
yeah, it's consumable. Pro tip, similar experience, like I sometimes, or just lack of time. I was very resistant to because I like the good old page, but audiobooks have been a game changer. Yeah, I'm more of a visual learner for sure, but I've kind of developed sort of like my auditory processing from it. And I'll listen to a book like at the gym while I'm working out.
Right? That's what, and yeah, like when I was driving a lot more for work, I started sneaking like audiobooks, and that was great. Because then it's like, yeah, there's no reason I'm driving anyways. And it's, you know, theoretically more thought-provoking than most of the YouTube videos I watch. So yeah, I was able to get in some books that way. But yes, like, but everything's so easy now with technology. So like the Habits books, Kindle download, it's right there, you know, I have to like shuffle paperbacks around.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been a better time to get information. There's almost too much. I mean,
too much media. Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, I'm glad you're digging that book. And I think that's the better one between that and Power of Habit. The Power of Habit one, I think, does a better job of explaining the mechanisms of habit formation. But in terms of actionable steps, I think Atomic Habits does a better job of just being like, here, do this one thing. And I think that's most useful for most people. Awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate the conversation and diving in with me.
Good stuff.
Did you get some good stuff from it?
Yeah, always. It was super good. Like, I mean, you can never put, well, some people might say it. I don't think you can put too much thought, you know, the unexamined life is not for you. So like, I don't ever think you can put too much thought or discussion into the stuff because most people don't. And these aren't, you know, nor conversations usually have with friends. So I think it's great to dive in and give like a critical eye and stuff, you know, philosophy major college. So
undervalued for sure. But I agree with you. I think this is the stuff that actually impacts your life on a daily basis too. We're talking about the things that can genuinely improve the quality of your life.
Right. And asking questions, you know, like, why do you do the things you do? How do you do the things you do? Is that the best way to do it? Like, you know, is there a punch up that could make you a little more efficient? Like, I mean, it's a good thing we're not animals, you know, habits can be changed. Well, even a lot of animals can be trained out of bad habits, but you know, I think we can make changes.
Yes. No, very, very true. Yeah. Better than debating what to eat for dinner, but also a worthwhile debate sometimes.
Right. I don't know. Is food nowadays that good? Do we have good choices for food? I don't know. You, maybe you, I'm like over in Burbank. Aren't you like the other side of the hill?
Yeah. I mean, there's good food everywhere, especially compared to other parts of the country. Like we're pretty lucky here, I think, for the options that we have.
Diverse. Yes, that's true. We're not stuck in like a region of only deep fried food, you know, or something like that. Like,
yeah. I mean, I grew up with like, what are we getting tonight? Pizza or Chinese?
Oh, sure.
That's it. That's it.
Classic American takeout.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm grateful for it. Well, sir, I appreciate you. We're going to dive in Friday and talk about the new workouts and kind of examine where you're at. And I'm interested to see how you're feeling after this first week on the new phase as well.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, man.
Absolutely. Well, sounds good, Jeremiah. Thank you. I'll talk to you on Friday.
Take care. Bye.
Later, sir.